And one of the main things that you guys can have some control over is having a stable or a consistent bedtime. Your wake up times are going to be at the mercy of the tones, but have a consistent bedtime that's also replicated in your off duty life, because your guys' circadian rhythm, it is highly disrupted. And the one thing that helps stabilize and normalize the circadian rhythm is a stable bedtime and a stable wake up time. Wake up is out of the equation, so the only thing we can control is a stable wake or bedtime.
Welcome to Grab the Irons podcast. I'm Eric Allsog with my co-host Chris Sickenberger, where we talk all things health and wellness for first responders and everyday people.
Here at Grab the Irons, we emulate what the irons in the fire service represent. Effective, efficient, no BS, nothing fancy, just results.
Here on the show, that is exactly what our goal is for our listeners. Force past the fads, the snake oil promises, and not drain your wallet.
We want our listeners to come away with something effective, efficient, and actionable.
Now let's get to work.
Okay. Dr. Higuera, welcome to Grab the Irons podcast. We're really excited for you to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Been looking forward to this for a while. I've reached out to you on social media. I've been following you for a while, and you've got some amazing content that you put out that every firefighter should see. Some good actionable stuff, and we're just very excited, and it's a pleasure to have you on this podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
So let's get started. Let's get your background of who you are, what gets you excited every day to do what you do, and like what gets you excited to wake up in the morning. What's like kind of some interesting things that you've seen in your field that like sparks your interest and gets you going?
The part where the genuine excitement started from is once I started bringing the research over to Instagram, because I'm employed as a college professor at Santa Ana College. It's a community college, and we work with a population of roughly about 2,000 firefighters per year. So we have roughly about, let's say, 25 to 30 different fire departments, some police departments as well, but the majority of our clientele is fire. And getting into that field there was a lot of motivations of why I wanted to pursue a PhD in fire. But to answer the question of what gets me the most excited is now when I'm bringing my research over to the firefighter directly. To expand a little bit more on this is when we're going through the academic process. When I'm doing my master's, when I was doing my PhD, the clientele or the audience I'm writing for, they're for other academics. The ones who are going to be reading my publications, they're other PhDs are going to be reading and judging whether I was a good quality study, whether how we can apply, how applicable the results and the findings are over to the everyday firefighter. And that's part of the process that you have to go through in order to get awarded that PhD. But upon graduating, finishing my program, I was kind of going through this phase of, I have to publish. I don't have to, but I want to publish. But is my advisor and everybody and who his colleagues are they going to be the only ones reading my stuff? Is it really never going to get to the individual who really needs to read this?
Right.
So that's when I started getting into Instagram and saying, this firefighters here, the firefighters on social media, we have to bring this research that we spent the past 6 months to a year writing up, going through the review process and finally publishing it. These individuals have to read it. Where are the firefighters at? Social media. And Instagram was the one that I'm most comfortable with, so that's the one that I chose. And now every morning when I wake up, and it sucks because I wake up and I grab my phone, but I want to see how well the content is doing, because it lets me know this content has been resonating. Look how the traction is getting. Or this one, I didn't do such a good job because reasons, and then the share metric is not there. The save metric is not there, meaning the guys aren't finding value to it. So there's that whole fine-tuning kind of phase that I'm going through is, how can I get this message to resonate the most? Whether it's a very sexy message like sleep and sleep schedules, or a very unsexy message like mental health. How do we get this topics to be more of a conversation that you guys have around the kitchen table? And the more that you guys start discussing it on your own, I think that's when we're going to start noticing some changes in the fire service.
Yeah, bridging the gap is huge, right? You're putting all this work and all this research into finding what moves the dial, the needle, but how do you like get it out to the masses, to the people that really need it, right? You found all this great stuff, all this great information, but what's the best way to, push all that out there so people can actually make the changes, use the tools that you've found that can put people in a better direction. I mean, that's a big part of what we're doing here is, yeah, we have a conversation with the guys and gals in our fire department, but that's myopic, right? So we're trying to look on a bigger picture and spread more information and get more of this out, because we all deal with the same thing, but sometimes the conversation just, it doesn't spread like it should. And, people are out there that this information could change their life, right? It could go for the better, change their health, change their relationships, longevity, all these things. Everyone wants to feel better. Everyone wants to like have a good, healthy career, want to have good relationships with their peers and their family members. And like, you're doing the work, and it's just like, if you can't get it out, what's the point?
To add a layer to this one is that education component is, I think the everyday firefighter in present day, they care about their internal health, but also their career longevity.
Sure.
I think that trend has really evolved over the decades. We can talk more about that in a bit. But now the everyday firefighter, whether they're here in California, somewhere in the Midwest or on the East Coast, or even across the world somewhere, they're looking for, how do I improve my sleep, improve my body comp, improve my cholesterol, all these different metrics that we care about. But then where we go to the source to get that information, one, it could be your physician. That's a whole rabbit hole from there. But then two, we're going on the social medias, we're going on the Instagrams and the TikToks and the YouTubes and the Googles.
Right.
And we may find a good source of information, or we may not. And whoever that source of info is, how well does that advice relate over to the firefighter? Because I think that's the missing link there. So think of Andrew Huberman, phenomenal source for information.
Yeah.
But you guys have two different lives. You guys have an on-duty life and an off-duty life. So the info that he's putting out, it applies to the everyday individual person who works a 9 to 5, who gets to sleep at 10 o'clock p.m. and wake up 7-8 hours later. Mm-hmm. And although that information is great, how does that relate to the fire person? And that's the missing link there.
Yeah, that is a great and huge point. And also, where we consume our information too is like, how credible is it? Because with the internet, anyone, any Joe Schmo can kind of put out some information, can parrot what Huberman or Ben Greenfield or these, health experts are putting out, or Peter Attia. But for you, this would be something that'd be great for you to kind of go into. Like, you've got how many years of research and time with specifically firefighters. So if you could dive into that a little bit of like your research and what you've been doing over the years and where your data is coming from.
Yeah, because everybody now is, we know 30 years ago, right? The fire service has changed dramatically. You said the statistics have gone up for calls 300%, right? And the they've changed from, kind of just fighting fire back in the day to now we're running EMS calls. We're bombarded with traumas. We're bombarded with all this other, we're not sleeping at night, right? So now how does that correlate from then to now? And I've been going through your social media pages, and it's great. All the information that you have on there is relevant to today. And it's great because nobody has a research from 30 years ago, and you have all that research. You've been going back 20 years, right? And everybody takes care of us now, but they didn't see where we came from. And that's great that you're on that.
So there's
dive into that.
A lot of ways we can take this topic here. So I came on to my employer, which is Santa Ana College. I came on in 2017-ish as a part-timer. Fast forward 2 years later, I get offered the tenure track position as a full-time professor there. And then from that moment, that's where I said, I'm going to pursue my PhD. The motivation behind that's a different conversation. But nonetheless, so I started my own individual research in 2019, all the way up until now. It was about a 5-year program of my PhD work, so that I have data that I specifically have looked into. But because my employer, they've been running this wellness program since like the 80s. I don't know the specific time. I've heard from different sources that it's been in the mid 80s, late 80s. So let's say somewhere in that realm there. And we've been running this wellness program where we look at blood work, we look at your guys' your lung performance, your EKG, both at rest and at different levels of stress. We've been looking at now more performance metrics like muscular strength, endurance, etc. So this profile, we've been developing it for every single firefighter that we work with since the 80s. Now, fast forward to present day, you see the decades of data that we have of what the firefighter used to look like back then, what it looked like in the 90s, 2000s, 2010s. And when I started just getting curious and say, oh, this is what a current firefighter looks like today in the 2020s. Did it look much different in the 90s? What about anywhere in this timeline, in the previous timeline? And the answer is yes. And one, I can talk more about that, but then I
dive into that. That's super interesting.
wanted to ask the older firefighters who were around in the 90s or maybe the late 80s. There's not many of them left that are in the 80s, but ask them hey, what was life back then? What was life in the fire station? What did you guys talk about? What was health like? What was wellness like? And one, I see it from the data, but two, now that that personal experience where they're sharing with me, and that gets that same answers that they're giving me kind of replicates across the older 50-year-olds that I've spoken to. And it's interesting to see this trend, this evolution of wellness in the fire service. But I want to put a little asterisk to this one here is I have a very small bubble of firefighters. We have Southern California, which just the everyday American here in Southern California, we care about health. We care about aesthetics for whatever reason, whether it's vanity, ego, or just the culture here in SoCal. And then put in a wellness program that's continuously educating about topics of internal health and external health. So that huge asterisk doesn't apply to many other departments across the US or maybe even across the world, is how important is health for a firefighter. And I hate to say Midwest, but I'm going to say Midwest. How important is health for the firefighters in the Midwest? And now these departments in the Midwest, do they have a wellness program that's speaking directly to the firefighters saying, hey, look at all this research. This is how it applies to you. And there's all those layers that you have to consider when I'm going to give you guys this data here. So now with that in play is the firefighter from the late 80s into the 90s, they were chubbier. They were much fatter. Their body comp was higher. One, BMI was a stronger metric back then. So we now know the limitations of BMI, but if I'm just looking at BMI, the firefighter was much fluffier. They were huskier for sure. But then we also had, we looked at body fat percentage through a metric called bioelectrical impedance analysis. And it was a old scale, like I look at it now and it's taken his years already, but the metrics or the numbers that we had back then, the firefighter on average, this is just the average firefighter, it was roughly around 23-24% body fat, which is already considered overweight, and they're on the brink of being considered obese. So a body fat percentage for males, a body fat percentage of 25% and greater is considered obese. So you're almost there, 23-24%. And then as the decade has progressed, now getting into 2000s, then you start seeing the firefighters starting getting leaner. One, also another thing to consider on this one, there was a big hiring freeze in the late 2000s to the mid 2000s, somewhere in that realm there.
Yeah, 2007, 8, yeah, and it took a while, right? Yeah.
So the average firefighter was older. The departments were much older because there was not a lot of young recruits coming in. Yeah. So that pushed the average much higher. But then now the hiring freeze is done. We're into the 2010s and the departments are getting younger. So that means the department average is also getting leaner because you have younger blood now. So you start seeing the average firefighter start to get much leaner. So now we're looking into like 20%, 21%. Compare it now to the 2020s. And now on average, at least the departments that we work with, their body fat percentage is roughly about 19 to 20%. So they've gotten leaner. We're just talking averages here. But then we start breaking it down into like age groups. So the 20-year-old firefighter in the 90s compared to the 20-year-old firefighter in the 2000s compared to the 20-year-old firefighter in the 2020s. And you kind of get my sequencing here.
Yep, cool.
So now it's no longer averages. Now we're just talking about the 20-year-olds. And that has also gone through an evolution. It was before the 20-year-olds were still on the chubbier side. Then they started getting leaner. And it's following that same progression of the firefighters getting healthier. And then now we're noticing it go to the opposite direction, we're noticing body fat percentage slowly begin to climb a little bit. So to give you guys a little bit more context about our program is we have firefighter across their entire life cycle, meaning those who are aspiring to get into the fire service. These are the 18 to 22-year-old kids who are going through a basic fire academy at a community college level. They're going through this, they're getting their firefighter one so they can apply to a department from there. So we have them at that age, and we're collecting information on their wellness as well, their body fat, their cardio, etc. We don't do the blood work for the college kids, but nonetheless, we do everything else besides blood work. And then once they get hired on with the department, they go through their towers, whether it's a 4-week tower because it's a small department or a 16-week tower because it's much longer. Then we get them again once they're on probation. So first year, if we're contracted with the department. So we saw them when they were 20 years old. We see them again when they're 25 years old because they just finished their towers, and now they're on the floor and they're going through a wellness program there. So they can compound that over the first generation firefighters. And as you guys know, you guys are going to lose a bunch of weight when you guys are going through the towers.
Oh yeah.
As you guys know, once you guys hit the floor and now you're on probation, you're going to gain a good amount of that weight back.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to remove that data out of the equation. Now I have to look at the second year firefighter because now this is when they're getting the groove of the actual station life, no longer under the stresses of probation. So that firefighter who's in their 20s, they're a little chubbier. So there's something going on here, and the data is just telling me that they're a little bit chubbier. That's it. Now it's up to me to interpret that, and it's up to you guys as well. So I go to the different fire departments and I ask them, "Hey, your first year, second year firefighters, how do you see them in terms of shape, fitness, etc., just from a athletic performance standpoint?" And I get the same answer time and time again across multiple departments. Yes, you have your 1, 2, 3 guys and girls that are great studs, right? They can put out, they have got good levels of fitness, they're strong. But then you go to the middle of the curve, and unfortunately I get the same response is they're out of shape. They're not the same that we were back then 10 years ago.
Interesting.
So there's something going on there.
So we have some younger kids coming through, but they're paramedics. So
Yeah.
They're not firemen because we're doing a single role program. And we love them. They're great. We'll start off by that. But just, it seems like, and we have a bridge program from paramedic to fire. And we had to do that bridge program on our own time without anybody holding our hand, without anybody going, hey, do this next, do this next, do this next. It seems like the drive and the motivation for this generation of 20-year-olds coming through is not as much as when we came through and we had to do it on our own. And, even though we had families, we went to paramedic school, like we had to do these things on our own. And I think it's it's not all of it, right? But it's kind of a drive thing, in my opinion. And
curious to see if it's like a cultural thing that's changed, like our where we put fitness and like the importance of what we think it is. And there's just different people too. Like, we were both athletes, so it's just like kind of ingrained, and that's like part of my day. Like, mental health for us is if we don't get a workout in, we're just not right in the head.
Yeah.
But for your research, it's curious to see those couple years. Like, what is it, the job change? Is the job changing it so these guys are potentially gaining weight earlier? Or is it a cultural thing where we're like kind of putting health and wellness on the back burner and not making it as a priority? Or like that was just the culture back then, like you were saying, that these guys were in better shape at a younger age?
So I've gone down this rabbit hole of thinking of maybe it's something specific to the fire service that's causing this weight change. And I'm not convinced on that one. And this one, I don't have any data behind it. So this is just my interpretation coupled with the other firefighters that I've been informally interviewing on this. And I think it's a generation thing. Because if you look at the individuals who are getting brought on right now, these are people who were born in 2005, 2007, 2010, etc. So these are your early 20-year-olds.
Oh my gosh.
We're old.
I'm old.
So if you look at just what the upbringing was for children born in the 2005s and what their high school experience was, what was their collegiate experience was, and they were born in the age of this stuff here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
point.
So the phone was released, that first iPhone was released in '07. So depending how old you guys are, I was already in high school when that got released. So that wasn't it wasn't a big like staple in my upbringing. Is
Yeah.
our upbringing was we go play outside. Sure, we had video games for a little bit, but our upbringing was athletics, was sport. Let's go run around the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And then that the young kids today, they still play with their friends, but they're connected online playing with their friends.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
So
It's tough.
I think this is just one small component to say to say that everything is predicated off of just technology. That's an unfair conclusion there, but I think it plays a huge role onto it. And there we
It's
can
probably the
kind of go
biggest
down the path there.
factor. It's right. It's probably the biggest factor that's affecting them right now. Like if you had to pick one thing and touch it, right? That's probably what it would be.
I would add another one to this one as well. And again, generational. This is not fire specific, but the children who were born, let's say in the 2000s now, and you look at the work ethic for the millennials and the Gen X and their work ethic. Think of your guys' peers who are older than you. How much of their life have they dedicated to the job? Meaning they're working their regular shifts plus they're picking up a lot of overtime for a multitude of reasons. So then the children of those parents are saying, "Hey, my dad was rarely around, or my mom was rarely around because they work so much." And I don't want that for one myself, and I don't want it for my kids. Maybe I'll just put in my whatever shift schedule you guys are on. I'll just put in my regular shift schedule, and then if I get forced, well, shit, I got forced, but I don't want to do it. If there's voluntary overtime, I'm not taking it because I'd rather spend time with my family, with my kids, for my own personal well-being. So you see that cultural change there. So the olders are saying, "Hey, look at this 25-year-old. He doesn't want to work anymore."
Yeah.
The 25-year-old is saying, "Hey, look at these older guys. They dedicated their entire life, their identity is a job." So
Well, you
got to balance
yeah,
that.
Wow.
it's all like work-life balance, and yeah, I definitely saw that with like my dad. He'd work his ass off, and like I see it now that I want to spend time with my kids. Like I have hobbies outside that you want to enjoy that. It's a fine balance, but it's like I love the fire service and I love working. I like don't want to leave my brothers and sisters hanging, right? If there is an overtime out there, someone gets forced, it's like I mean, they have a family too, and I want to help
Exactly.
them out. So it is I've seen it generationally change quite a bit with the priorities that we have, and I think it's always like it's a pendulum, right? It always happens that way. You know, it swings one way, someone sees it. You know, you see it in everyday life, you see it in politics, you see it in health, you see it in all kinds of. You know, we go so far in one direction, we're like that was terrible,
That's not working.
and then we sometimes swing too far in the other direction,
Mhm.
and then that's like the clash of cultures and ideology and mindset, um, and that leads on to creating a culture, a fire culture for these new you know young individuals coming into a fire station, creating that culture like, hey, this is who we are, this is who we are as a fire department, this is like, we believe in fitness, we believe in working hard, we believe in training. So it's like getting them to buy into that instead of like having this separation, this dichotomy of like, oh, you're the young guy, you don't work hard, or you're just a salty old guy that just never sees his family, right? We got to find some middle ground there, and that has to do a lot with administration and leadership that we have with each department, is setting that culture and being consistent with it, in my opinion.
So how
So
did you bridge that gap with, because the people that are running departments now are the 30-year firefighters that didn't talk about health and wellness 30 years ago, right? Or not as much as it is now. So you've gone in off that, like you've been in with these departments. We're trying to run a health and wellness program at our department. And granted, our admin right now, I'm not saying that they're bad, but we have conversations with other firefighters to where it's hard to get that buy-in for the guy that's been in the job for 30 plus years, right? Because that's not how they used to do it, right?
Yeah.
So how did you bridge that gap?
so a lot of this has been kind of spearheaded by the directors of our program. Is they're the ones that have a lot more conversation with admins themselves. What I see at my level is, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, there's one department that we work with that's already part of our wellness program, and they got a new chief, let's say about 2 to 3 years ago. And a hot topic right now in the fire service is cold therapy and hot therapy, saunas and your cold plunge and such, and how much carry over, how much applicability does that have over the firefighter? So when we see hot button topics like this, we start right away developing some lectures. We look at all the literature that's out there, scientific literature, and we say, all right, these are the conclusions. This is how it can potentially apply to the firefighter. We developed a lecture on this. Now we're started putting this lecture in rotation. We're going to the different fire departments, and at the end of every lecture, we ask the guys and girls is, hey, what do you guys want to learn about next? And whatever that top topic is voted on, that's the topic we're bringing out next time.
Cool.
And it's been hot and cold therapies. So this particular department, colleagues, if you're listening to me, I'm sorry, but this is just what's happening in the fire service. Is that topic has been scheduled as the top topic that the guys want to learn about. It gets on my schedule saying we're teaching hot and cold therapies, and then as we're getting closer to the date where I'm teaching it, then we get a phone call saying, "Hey, we're gonna switch topics." I don't ask questions. I say, "Cool, what other topic are you guys gonna learn about?" And so we teach whatever new topic it is. That second time came around, I see the topic again on my schedule. I'm preparing for the lecture. And then within 2 weeks of the date that I'm supposed to present, hey, we're going to switch the topic. Let's do something else on, and it's another great topic that we're going to talk about. But then now the same pattern has happened twice. So I'm at the department now, and I give whatever lecture was slated for that. And then it never fails. 1, 2, maybe 4 guys stay after, and they kind of give you the scoop of what's happening inside the department.
Yeah.
And they say, all of us want to learn about hot and cold therapy, but our chief says, as long as he's chief, they're not going to get a sauna. They're not going to get a cold plunge. While their neighbor department, maybe a city or 2 down, every station now has a sauna and a cold plunge. They have 20-something stations. All of them got outfitted with infrared saunas and cold plunges.
Oh, wow.
So you see like the big contrast where there's a department that says, hey, this is working for our guys. Let's do it. It's going to cost us $50,000. Let's find the money somehow. Let's figure it out. And then you have the other department that says, nope, we're not going to do these. I don't know what the reasons are. So it can be policy. It can be who knows what the reasons. So it's not me for me to judge on that. I'm just telling you guys the outcome of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a contrast that you see there. So a lot of it is really top down. And I've done maybe a couple posts on this of how the health of the captain. Now, if we're just talking on the crew level, the health of the captain really resonates to the rest of the crew members. So just yesterday, I was talking to a captain. He's a newer captain. Let's say he's about 5 years in. And he says, my crew, we're busy. We know we're going to get ran. We know we're going to wake up multiple times, but I make it a thing is that we have to get some sort of PT in. We'll try to get in the morning. Awesome. Even if it's just 15, 20 minutes, we're going to try to get something in. I know that we're not going to have the time to shop, cook, prep, and consume our foods, but we're going to make the effort. Even if it's just a quick salad that we get at your local grocery store, but we're not going to go through the drive-thrus. And he says, and my crew, it's a very tight-knit crew because of it. And then he tells me the story of when he was an engineer, when he was a firefighter, is that he had I'm sorry, backtrack. That's a different story. Then he's telling me the story of that same crew. They had a different captain, a bit before or 2 years prior. And that captain himself, they didn't really care for fitness. You can tell in his aesthetics is he didn't care for fitness. And when his crew members now are telling him is, hey, the old captain, they didn't support our PT too much and diet or whatever. So you can see these big contrasts. This is just an N of 1 here. But then I go into the literature, and then now I start looking at it on a bigger scale now. Is if the health of a captain, if their body fat percentage is on the healthier side, right? Let's say, give them the benefit of the doubt here. We're 15, 16% body fat, somewhere in there. There's a high chance that their crew members are also going to be on the leaner side. If your captain is on the higher end, let's say 22, 24% body fat, there's a high chance that your crew members are also going to be on the higher end. So there's so much influence from top down on this one. And you guys can speak more to it than I can, is once you guys were your junior firefighter in the crew, how much influence did you guys have over PT? Maybe a little bit, but big influence, you guys can answer that one a lot better than I can.
Well, when I first got hired as new jack and everything, I had my degree in kinesiology. I played, some Division I football. And so I had maybe some street cred amongst my peers. And so they would listen to some of the things I did. but I actually went into a department that, it was routine. You did rig check, you ate breakfast, talked about the day, and everyone as a crew went up into the gym and worked out. That was the tightest group of people. They're like my best friends to this day because we were every single day working out, doing something. We go to different agencies and play like ultimate
Tons
frisbee.
of grab ass too.
Yeah, there's that as well. That's how you get close as well.
Yeah,
But there was this huge emphasis on every captain. It was a single station department, but every captain made it a point. They sometimes wouldn't participate, but they knew that this was the time that we would work out. It was like 10 o'clock to 11:30 or something, and it was like clockwork. And I miss it. And there are those captains that even today, that when I'm working for them, like I know that they're like, all right, it's a priority. Like they'll talk about the day, like, do this, do that, get a PT in. And then some will just be like, well, we're just going to do this and don't even speak about PT.
Yeah.
So you're 100% right. You have a leader that is your captain that is leading the day. When they set that expectation, even just say it, like not necessarily that we do it as a crew, but say, get your PT in. It makes a monumental change and momentum in that day, that you're more inclined to like, oh, Cap said PT, right? Like, go take care of this. Go take care of that. He also said, go take care of your physical fitness. So I'm going to go do that.
Take care of yourself, take care of your crew, right? Like,
right.
That's
my
thing.
Show them
that you want them to take care of themselves, which...
Well, my biggest slogan, like that I talk about as a health and wellness guy, is like we spend all this time working and checking our equipment, all of our apparatus, our tools, our EMS. We do all that stuff to make sure we're good for the day, but we don't do that to our bodies a lot of the time, which is all that stuff's useless. If you're hurt, broken, tired, all those things, like it should almost be as much of a priority as our rig checks is like focusing on the rig that's most important, that's like driving all these tools and using them, and make sure that they're operational. So I totally agree, and I've seen it firsthand in my career, and I would hope that there'd be more of an influence in that, and getting word out is tough. It's tough for those people that don't have that habit to change it that way, but that could be a top down thing as well. I mean, that can come from the chiefs and everything, like, hey, we are putting a priority on physical fitness, and then maybe that trickles down to those captains.
But what you said, what resonates with me is like, when you work out as a crew, right? Let's say you're at a rural department and you don't fight a lot of fire, so you don't have that way to, like, almost like trauma bond, I guess you can call it. Like you go on a fire, right? And then after that fire, you come back to station, and you're like, fuck yeah, that was awesome. You don't do it you don't high five in the driveway of the burned down structure, of course. You do it when you get back to the station. And like there's that sense of camaraderie that you build with your brothers and sisters that you can't get anywhere else in life. And it happens in military and police and just, in our job. And then you get a little bit of that every single day in the gym when you're training as a crew, when you're suffering and you're hurting and you're pressing forward. And you're making that guy work harder, and he's making you work harder, and maybe there's a little bit of competition between the two of you, which is pushing you to be a better person. So, yeah, that really resonates with me. Like that, the captain almost needs to be like that dad, right? Because that's my first captain I emulated, right? I was like, I want to be like him. He's a badass, and he worked out every day, and we cut hand line, and he cut trees down, and
he was in the front line with you.
Yeah, and like.
Led by example type deal.
And that's kind of who I emulate myself off of. So, yes, that's a great point.
If you take what you guys just explained right now, and now fast forward 5 to 10 years, the majority of the captains are going to be millennials. Millennials who probably grew up with a culture of fitness already. So if you guys have that experience of, my captain used to do this for us, now when I'm in that leadership position, now I'm going to do that for the next generation. And I think that's what is really going to take off. Because then now, let's go rewind 5 to 10 years ago. And if your captain, when you were a junior senior firefighter, was a Gen Xer who just didn't really care about fitness for whatever the reason is, whatever their motivation or lack of motivation is, then you noticed how that kind of may have affected the binding of the crew there. And then you don't have that example of how to lead well. So then when you make a captain, then you don't have that example already. That's one point on that one. The other one, what you just explained right now, how the captain's kind of like the dad. There was a retired BC that I was having a conversation with, and he says the two firefighters on the crew, they're like the kids of the family. They're the younger ones. They're very rambunctious. They want to go in there and fight the fires. They're the ones with the energy. Then your engineer is more like your cool uncle, or the one who says, "Hey, you guys are fucking up too much. You guys have to tone this down," or "Hey, you guys got to pick it up on these different things right here." And then he's kind of giving you that advice off to the side. Your captain is the disciplinary one. Is this is what we're going to do today? If we do a poor job on it, then whatever the consequences are, as a crew, as an individual, you guys know that life better than me. And then your BC is more like your grandpa, is where he's looking at around multiple families now, and then he has multiple crews under his leadership, and he's been there, he's done that. And if that BC has a wellness and health as a big staple of who he is, then that's going to trickle down to the crews that he oversees.
Totally.
And if it doesn't, if the BC doesn't have that instilled in him already, then you're not going to see that too much as a staple that gets trickled down. Yeah, so all these topics, they're very interweaved with one another. It's not a one standalone thing where we say, hey, this is a problem. If we just change this one thing, everything else will start getting better. And what I've learned on the fire service, this is me looking through the window, looking in through the fire departments, is a lot of these issues are really interweaved with one another. And that's the tough part, to really kind of decipher and tease out where the root problem is at.
Yeah, and you've got different core values and different experiences all these guys have gone through, and to find value, what's valuable to them is going to be different from person to person. So it's hard to do a blanket statement and just say like, oh, well, this is how you're supposed to be. Like they've had their experiences, they've had their captains and all their, and that's the reason they react a certain way and act. So it is a multifaceted issue. And to address it, it's tough. I mean, I guess it is just more education based. Some people, like, you give them statistics and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to change my behavior based off this statistic. Or they see somebody do something like, oh, well, I can see it right here in my face. Like, they've lost weight, they've gotten stronger. I'm going to ask them and go that route. So the reach and change that, changing behaviors, as you can imagine, is a pretty difficult thing to do. But it's something that if we give enough evidence, we see enough, like, those older guys in like the 80s and stuff, what was the life expectancy? It was 5-7 years after retirement. That's another like motto or mission goal that we have as our health and wellness, is we work so hard for our job and love it, and we pour so much into it. We want to enjoy our retirement too. We have this great retirement, and we don't want to die 5, 7, 8 years afterwards. So like getting that into people's head, like, hey, you've got to put the work in now in order to enjoy, not be broken, not mentally, physically broken when you're done with the job, so you can enjoy your family, enjoy this retirement, and be that even like a mentor or grandpa afterwards to these people behind you, and give this great knowledge that you've acquired over the years.
On top of that too, we have to work 7 years longer now as well.
Yeah, with PEPRA.
So with PEPRA, I mean, that's huge. In your 50s, I mean, I'm in my early 40s, and I mean, just from my early 40s to my early 30s, I'm a different person, right? As far as how I recover. So I don't know what another 10 years on top of that's going to be. So, the aging firefighter in the fire service is going to be a big deal. And I don't know when they evaluated PEPRA, how they thought that was going to work out, because I just feel like everybody's going to end up comping out now. Not everybody, of course, but
sure.
People are going to get hurt, because people get hurt when they're 30 in this job, let alone 56 years old. So, I mean, I know you've touched on that in the past. What do you think about the whole 56-year-old firefighter thing?
So I learned about PEPRA about maybe 2-3 years ago. And when I first learned about it, I wasn't as deep into the data and the research as I am now. So then now let's fast forward to present day. Again, we have data from 30 years ago. So let's compare the resilience, how robust the firefighter was back then to how it is now. And let's project to what it's going to look like, let's say 15, 20 years from now. And so just keep that as a framework. And when we look at the published literature in firefighters, there's 5 main predictors of injury in the fire service. 5 main predictors from a wellness perspective. There's a bunch of other ones out there that are like occupational related, but let's just go from wellness perspective. The number one strongest predictor of injury, age, is those who are over the age of 45, their risk of injury is much higher. So then now the second strongest one there, and it's a kind of a close tie between body fat percentage and VO2 max, your fitness. So if you think out about it logically, if you just look at those top 3 there, we have older firefighters who are fat and out of shape. Just logically speaking, that makes sense, is those firefighters have the highest risk of injury. Now, number 4 and number 5 on that list is your muscular strength and your muscular flexibility. You can argue that muscular strength does have a highest predictive value going higher on that list, but for the sake of argument today, let's just go with that hierarchy there. So we have age, we have body fat, we have VO2 max, we have muscular strength on that 4th position, flexibility on that number 5. So that's the profile there that predicts injuries. Now let's apply this to the 50-year-old firefighter. As we get older, we're just talking general aging here, non-firefighter aging. This is just your general average individual. As the individual gets older, it's much harder for them to keep off body fat and put on muscle mass. So that already is going to start touching on body fat percentage and on muscular strength. As you start getting older, your rate of decline for your VO2 max or your fitness begins to accelerate as you start getting into age. So just age alone is going to make you fatter, weaker, and less fit. And now let's put a firefighter level onto this. Now, let's say a firefighter's been on with the department for the past 25 years, and they've been on a busy rig and a busy station, and they haven't had the best PT regimen, nutrition regimen, because the job is they get woken up 1 to 3 times after midnight, and then that impacts their motivation to want to exercise, that impacts their motivation, their desire to eat that lean chicken breast or a salad, and they go to whatever drive-through because they're busy and they're tired and they're stressed or whatever those reasons are. Compound that over a 20, 25-year career. Now the last 5 years of their career there, these are firefighters who are now older, have high levels of body fat because of poor habits back then, have low levels of fitness because of poor habits back then, that have low levels of muscular strength because poor habits back then. And now we have a 53, 55, 57-year-old firefighter who's trying to hold on as much as they can. They're still on the floor, and they're trying to hold on because they have to get to 57 to get that 2.7%. And
sounds like it's going to work out well.
That is that
Nice
is
recipe.
the reality. If nothing changes from here going forward, we're going to see that. We're going to notice that. And now put in another layer on top of that is call volume in the 80s was, if I going off of memory here, total call volume was like 11 point something million. Call volume at the end of the 2010s, or just averaged out throughout the 2010s, was like 32 point something million. This is nationwide. So that's roughly about a 300% increase. I'm rounding up here. The real number was like 280 something percent, but 300% increase, threefold the amount of work that you guys used to do. Now it's on a national scale. Let's just zoom in and just talk about your own department, whether it's you guys here that you guys are here with me right now or whoever's listening. Is reflect back to when you guys first got brought onto the fire service. What was average call volume back then? How many calls would you guys run per year? And then bring it down as, well, how many calls would you guys run per shift? And you guys can come up with some rough number in mind. Now, fast forward to present day is ask those same questions. Are you guys running more calls today than you guys are back then? Are you guys waking up more today than you guys were back then? Yes. How much has your PT and your diet has been influenced today compared to what it was back then? So you start seeing how all the tentacles really start to spread out here. Mm-hmm. So now let's go back to the original conversation, Pepra. Now let's fast forward 15 years, 20 years into the future. Is call volume then going to be higher than what we have present day? The answer, it's almost positively yes. Yeah. So whatever degree of influence call volume in the job has had on your wellness today, how much more influence is it going to have in 15, 20 years from now? So then that puts the whole framework together. Is if the firefighter, I'm talking the average firefighter, maintains the same average PT and diet that the everyday firefighter currently has, where they may work out 2, maybe 3 times per week, but they're interrupted workouts. And then they go home and they have a family to attend to. So maybe PT is not there either. Diet is up and down, these ebbs and flows here. How much more is that going to be compounded in 15, 20 years? And then that's the framework that we have to be dealing with there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you nailed it on the head.
Wow.
It's only going to go up. The people don't talk about or think about the compounding issues that just the job is going to do, right? So you look at, again, myopically day by day, like I'm feeling this way, but you don't look into the future like, hey, if we're on this current trend, how am I going to sustain this? Like I'm just getting by now. Just imagine another 5, 10 years. I mean, I have 20 years left, right? So I got to think about that. And where I want to kind of go and segue is, do you think that we as firemen in, you know, the fire service, are we tactical athletes, and should we train and like act as if we were a professional athlete? Like, should we really put so much emphasis on diet, nutrition, recovery, sleep, all the things? Like you hear LeBron putting in $2 million each year on his recovery because he wants to maintain his longevity. Do you believe that we should kind of have the same mindset in this kind of field where when we go to work, we're an athlete, like we're a tactical
industrial
athletes,
is what they call us.
industrial athletes, where we're not each game, we're a marathon. So each tour is a small, tiny game that like we're kind of getting ready for. And like,
For 30,
are we prepared
37 years?
For 37 years, 40 years. Do you believe that we should kind of have that mindset going into our career, like telling the guys young, like, look it, you need to think of yourself like LeBron James in a sense, right? We're just using,
I mean, that makes sense for me.
yeah, that's how
LeBron.
I relate to it. It's like, okay, these guys, they put so much into it so that they can be ready for game day and have, you know, injury free and perform at their highest. What are your thoughts on that?
So the term tactical athlete encompasses fire, police, and military. And then the industrial athlete, these are guys who are working your construction jobs, your corporate jobs, or they're behind a chair and a desk for 8 hours. So they've got in the word athlete and just kind of put a different prefix before it. Before it was your athletic, your sport athlete, then now tactical athlete, now you have industrial athlete, which is a far different conversation. But if we just focus on the tactical athlete here, and I like my foundation of strength and conditioning came from a company called Exos, and they were a company called Core Performance, and they have their philosophy is every day is game day, and their main population they work with is your high level. Think of your collegiate professional athletes. So that's where I got a lot of my training at, and before I got there, when I was going through my collegiate education and just my own personal education, looking up online how to exercise, the main form of education or the main form of exercise that we have still present day today is bodybuilding. That is what has had the biggest influence in the fitness world. We're not talking firefighter fitness here. We're just talking fitness general. Is when you go work out, you're working out like a bodybuilder. Today in the gym, I was reflecting on that as I was doing my bicep curls, saying, fire guys don't give a shit about bicep curls, nor should they care, because biceps, yeah, they look good, but how well do they transfer over to the job? But when I say we, just like the male in general, we want our aesthetics to look better. And how do we make that aesthetic look better? The bodybuilding method is how do we build a bigger, thicker back, chest, etc. But how well does that translate over to what you guys do on a everyday basis? And the answer is very little. And so then to put back that Exos philosophy that I have that I still carry with me today is we're not training you guys to have bigger muscles. You'll get bigger as a result of our program, of our philosophy, our framework, but that's not the main goal. The goal for you as an athlete first, we're not talking tactical athlete yet, the goal is for you to be more robust, more resilient. So you guys can take the impact, the trauma, whatever damage you're going to take either in your sport or your career, so that your body can sustain that and recover from it easily. And when the body breaks, let's say it's a ligament, a muscle, a bone, it's because the stress that was imposed on that tissue itself was far greater than what the tissue can withhold. So if you just look at it from a pound, like from poundage, and if I got a wood board here, if I got a wood board that can only sustain 100 pounds, if I put 20 pounds per day and take it off, the board can do no problem. It can be able to sustain that. But if I get that same board and then I'm putting 20 pounds, and the next day I'm putting another 20, and the next day I'm putting another 20, eventually that board is going to begin to bend, and eventually it'll break. It's the same thing with your guys' soft tissue, your ligaments, your muscles, your bone, your heart tissue in this case, is there's a breaking point there. So how we manage that breaking point is what they call workload management or stress management. In the sport world, you're tracking like overall volume, how many games you're playing, how many minutes you're actually playing, how many sprints did you have, how many changes of direction. All that is tracked to a T in the sport world. In the fire world, not so much. The only metric that we actually track for you guys is call volume, and we can break up that call volume onto your fires, EMS, etc. But then, how much stress is enough to cause some sort of injury on the firefighter? And then, whether that be a physical injury, physiological injury, or some sort of psychological injury, that takes us down a different rabbit hole. But if we continue on this topic here, is how that firefighter should be training so we can mitigate injury as much as possible. Is that firefighter has to be stronger, and all your main movement patterns, your push, your pull, your squat, and your hinge, your rotation-like movements, and this is the bread and butter of what an S&C program should look like for the firefighter, is how do we get you stronger in all those main movement patterns, but then we have to add a layer to that. Is if I would ask you guys, and play this game with me right now, if I would ask you guys to come up with a workout for today, and I said, all right, guys, today we're going to do a full body workout. What's your guys' go-to lower body push? What do you guys got? Go for it.
Well, you're asking.
I like unilateral, like kettlebell squats type.
So, like you nailed it on the head for me. Like I'm a big Dan John guy, and he is the 6 movements, and I always do that.
Hey,
so like,
nailed him.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, this guy's great. I love this. This is amazing. This is right up my wheelhouse, and more people should know about it. But yeah, I would say a lower body push. I mean, that'd be a squat or a lunge, right? So you can barbell or a kettlebell.
I'd go unilateral too for stability.
So I'm asking the wrong audience, because the answer that I usually get at every firehouse is, I ask the question is, all right, we're going to build a workout today. What's your lower body push? And I point to somebody, and he goes, oh, my go-to is some sort of a squat. I point to somebody else and says, all right, your turn. You choose a lower body pull. Anything we're pulling weight off the ground. They go a deadlift and RDL. Mm-hmm. And I play that same game for the upper body stuff, is upper body push and pull. Some guy chooses a chest press or a overhead press, and the other guys choose a pull-up. And that same pattern there gets repeated across fire stations that I'm working with and departments. Is, all right, so cool. We have a great, robust program here. Look at what they all have in common is they're all bilateral movements. Yeah. And these are great. Continue doing these. But how often are you guys ever in this perfectly squared position ready to squat a weight up or hip hinge or pull a weight off the ground? And the answer everybody starts shaking their head is no. It's because now that 2 a.m. wake up that you guys just had, one, your back is already kind of stiff from 2 a.m. And you guys put on your boots and such, and you guys are going to go off to a 2 a.m. lift assist, and this patient happens to be 300 pounds. And they're stuck in the toilet or the bathtub, and you guys have to go figure it out. Mm-hmm. And now it's 2, 3, maybe 4 of you guys, if he's that big, and you guys have to figure it out now. Your feet are not going to be in a perfectly squared position. One foot is on top of some over-furnished stuff they have in their bathroom, bedroom, kitchen, whatever it is. And let's hope your back is strong enough to put up with that stress at that moment there. And if it is when you're 25, great, but it's not going to be the same when you're 45. No. So now
to go stretch real quick, Cap. I'll be back in 20 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Let me do some priming movements, and then I'll be back to help this person.
You put the whole thing together now is we have to get you strong in these movement patterns in both a bilateral way and a unilateral way. Because if I would ask you guys to give me a lunge right now, just body weight lunge, and I don't prompt you guys on what leg to choose, you're going to choose your dominant leg.
Oh,
and
always.
Unless I tell you guys to now switch legs, and then that leg is less stable, less strong, range of motion is compromised, whatever the reasons are. But your efficiency is not as good as in your non-dominant leg versus your dominant leg. And then if you guys have that one bad luck call at 2 a.m. where you now have to use your non-dominant leg to be the main mover to lift that patient, what is the chances of your knee and your low back holding up in that call there?
Well, you're
maybe good when you're 25, not when you're 45.
Right, and you're going to compensate too to get that dominant leg too, which could put you in an awkward position as well. We just want to go in there because we do feel stable, but now you're putting your leg in a weird compromise. You're twisting your back. You're not engaging the proper musculature, right? Yeah. And like the carries. So my big thing has always been carries, like unilateral unilateral carries are huge. Because what do we do most of the time? We'll have like a tool in one hand, or we'll have a drug box in one hand, and like
drug box.
yeah,
Come on,
mostly
bro.
drug. But like having that resilience, that anti-flexion, all that type of deal, like that is insanely important. And I'm so glad you bring up this topic of bodybuilding, because that's what we grew up in.
Yeah.
That was it. Like, how do I get the biggest muscles? How do I do my bodybuilder split where it's chest and tries, backs and buys, legs and calves and whatever?
Well, especially playing sports growing up, right? That's what you did.
Yeah, it changed a little bit when you get to collegiate level, like they do, Olympic lifts, and they start doing some more fine-tuned movements. But not everyone gets that exposure. It's like they get the high school coach that was just like, big three, do a squat, bench, and deadlift, and you're good. If you just do those, you're going to be super strong and you're going to be resilient. But I had a buddy who's a bodybuilder, was deadlifting over 600 pounds, and he went to go pick up his daughter, who's 25 pounds, out and away from his body, back seized up just like that. Because he can't function outside of this perfect box like you talked about. And no one really talks about it and then they're like, why does my back hurt? Well, it's like you've been doing the same movement patterns over. You've been in the frontal plane forever. Your body can't be very resilient once you get outside of it. And so that's like when I was a strength coach, it's like you have variables that you can control in the weight room, and that you want to be pretty solid, have good form and foundation, so that when you're outside of it on the playing field, you can't control the variables out there, but you want to be resilient enough and build that base here in the weight room so that your body can take all the beatings that you can't control out there.
So are you implementing a program, like an actual exercise program for the departments?
No, so I think that's one of the biggest holes in our program so far. But let me elaborate on this one. Is the needs for the individual firefighter within each department is very dynamic. So if I were to go to a department that says, all right, guys, you as a whole, you guys are going to be doing squatting on Mondays and deadlifting on Tuesdays and whatever program from there, half the guys are going to say, nope, I can't squat my back. Nope, I can't push anything off I can't press overhead my shoulder. So then that whole idea falls apart right away. So then you start going more individual is, hey, you in your early 20s, who you probably have a more robust and resilient body with less injuries or maybe none, then for you, it's going to be more in your favor to squat and deadlift and do the heavier stuff. You who's 45, 55 years old, who already has an ACL surgery, you have L4, L5 fuse, and you have a torn labrum in that shoulder, we're not going to put you on the squatting or any type of heavy stuff like that. It's how can we mimic that same squat pattern, but now either much, much, much lighter weight or more unilateral stuff. Because if you look at the difference between a squat and a lunge, they're almost identical, but just on a single leg motion. Your depth will probably change a little bit, but now we're splitting hairs on the differences there. It's how do we get you strong and robust on a movement pattern, not necessarily an exercise. I want you to be able to be strong as possible, as healthy as you can, to when you're picking something off the ground, whether you're squatting it off the ground or pulling it off the ground. So the way it actually looks like in practice is that's the hard part. Again, we have 2,000 guys and girls per year. Yeah. So to come up with individualistic programs like this, that's at scale. That's the hard part.
We're working. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Because we have roughly about 40, maybe 50 different instructors that work with us on a part-time basis, and a lot of them are from different disciplines. We start kind of adding this like almost like triage or concierge-like service where somebody raises their hand or sends us an email saying, hey, I need help with body fat, with strength, with injury. And then we have an exercise physiologist, a registered dietitian, an injury prevention specialist, and we have a mental health coach as well on our staff, and multiple of them. So then when someone does raise their hand and says, I need help, we send 2 or 3 professionals over to them, and it's on more of a one-on-one basis. So we don't carry it out at scale, but we try our best to carry it out on an individual basis, all at no cost to them.
Wow, that's cool.
So I got a question. I mean, that's all great, and I love that. It's amazing. But like, how does, like, if someone's listening to this podcast, where do they start? Like, do you have like good reference points of like some places they can go or what avenues they should go just to like try to get a good foundation of what total body exercise, like the Dan John type stuff where it's unilateral, you've got split stance, shoulder width. Like what's a good avenue for people just to eat some literature up, or even like YouTube to kind of see what's a good route to start? Because not all of us can have, say the guys in Midwest or East Coast that don't have these robust plans. What's a good starting point for people?
That's the tough part. So you look at and there's probably a bunch of names out there that I'm just not aware of, but you look at the individuals like the Dan Johns of the world, the Jim Wheelers of the world, who are just saying, hey, just get strong.
Mm-hmm.
So now the firefighter in the Midwest knows I have to get strong, but I have a low back and I have shoulder and I have knees. So then who is the next person to go to say is, how do I get strong despite my injuries?
Mm-hmm.
That's the tough part. There is one individual. His name is Michael Boyle. He's out of Boston. Old dude. He's focused in the hockey world, but he has expanded over to many other sports. And his philosophy on how you train an athlete is almost identical to how you train a firefighter. And he uses the same philosophy or framework that I learned at Exos when I was there in LA. And that philosopher, it's not even philosophy, it's just a framework. It's not method based. We're not saying we're CrossFitters or powerlifters or bodybuilders. We're saying, hey, let's lift some heavy weights and let's get you strong in different ranges of motion. Who is out there actually teaching that at a big scale for the firefighter? I don't know. And that was one of the holes that I see in one, our program, and then two in the social media space. So I got assigned a class that I'm going to be teaching next semester called Physical Fitness for the Public Service Personnel. And we already have a framework of how that class is taught, but this is the first time I'm going to be teaching it. And I'm reflecting on what does the next generation firefighter need to know about wellness or about training, just training, just gym stuff in general. And I'm going to start creating that resource, one, for the class I have to teach, but why not publish it also to the YouTubes and the Instagrams of the world?
Yeah, for sure.
And the Exos already, they have a robust exercise library where they say lower body push, these are all the bilateral exercises, these are all the unilateral exercises. This is how the exercise looks with the barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell, rubber band, etc. So they have that library already developed. Now it's up to me just to leverage it and say, college student, here's your homework assignment. Everyday firefighter, here's your homework assignment. So that one, hopefully by mid-spring to end of spring, I have the whole content already built out and polished enough and ready for the critique of social media.
We should have you collab with Kime.
Yeah, we use Kime right now as we're contracting out, and they're kind of parroting the same stuff that you're talking about. These guys are amazing. We actually had them on a podcast recently, and they're really good. And they've set up. We're lucky enough again to have like a very good, robust health and wellness program, and we're supported by our administration. And they're a local organization as well, and they're really excited to like help us out. And a lot of things you're talking about, they just have an app for us, and it's a lot of that. It's a full body workout, right? It's unilateral work. It's
Turkish get-ups, like
it's rotation, right? I mean, everything we do,
stretching.
It's not this perfect, box and what we do, and they have a lot of those exercises that make us more resilient, and it's been amazing. But still getting buy-in and like people.
Yeah. That's the hardest part is getting people to do it at work.
Yeah, so. That's always the hardest thing. So exercise. That's great. I'm glad that's a hole that needs to be filled, and we're really excited for you to come out and start seeing that, and that could be a great resource for people all across the nation. Let's move on to like sleep. So sleep is a big thing, right? So we're talking about tactical athletes and like all the things, and so recovery is going to be a big one, and it's one of those, another variable that we can't really control when we're at work, but we can do a better job at home. So could you give us a couple examples of what we can do to mitigate it at work, if it's just like a good sleep hygiene or taking naps, or if there's supplements or whatever, there's breathing, there's so many different things, but I'd like to, be curious on what your thoughts are, and then how much emphasis we should put on it when we're not at work, and like what that means of taking care of ourselves once we're off the job, and like what it means to come from work and then go to our home life and that transition, and how tough that is getting into our routine again.
And also, what do you do with if you don't get any sleep? What do you do the next day, right? Like if you get ran into the ground, if you're up 3 times after midnight, you know?
Tough. So the whole
Yeah.
topic of sleep is a monster of a topic in the fire service. If we are going to just answer the questions you have and try to limit the influence from all the other things that are going to impact recovery and performance outside of this conversation. So we're going to try to keep the scope rather narrow on this one.
Sure. Right.
All
We
right.
have a whole
So
podcast just on sleeping.
we can have multiple hours of conversation on this topic.
Yeah.
So if we divide this answer into on-duty life, off-duty life to make things a little bit easier. So on your on-duty life, you guys are at the mercy of tones. There's no negotiating that one. So then when, let's say the tones, actually, let me take a step back here. You guys are at the mercy of the tones here. And depending at the station you're at, however long you've been at there, your sleep hygiene has really been molded by the pattern in tones at night. Let me explain. Is maybe you guys or your guys' peers, there's individuals who say it's 10 o'clock, but I know there's going to be a call at 11 p.m. I'm not going to go to bed because I don't want to get disrupted. So then they push their sleep or their onset of sleep, their bedtime, till now 11, 11:15, 11:30. A tone might have or might have not gone off. If they didn't go off, then that's an hour and a half that they lost of some sort of recovery already. So that right there, I think there's a major hole that we can plug in there. And if you guys seen the movie Moneyball, Billy Bean, who used stats on how it can apply to baseball, take the same idea, bring it over to the fire service. This is an idea that I've been chopping up since middle of my PhD. It got denied because it was too big of a project, but now I want to try to carry it out where, let's say you guys give me your guys' rig call volume for the past 6 months, 12 months, whatever you guys can give me. And then I put it into my algorithms and my formulas, and I can say, hey, today is a Thursday. Depending on or looking past on your past 52 Thursdays that you've had, non-holiday Thursdays, the chances of you actually getting a call at 11 p.m., 15% or 20%, whatever that is. So then now you can go on that Thursday, look at your chart. It says, there's a very low chance of me getting a call. I'm going to get to bed. So now you're playing the whole statistic game. And then there's stations where, and there's a rig that you're going to get a call at 10, 11, 12. And then the data actually shows that. And there's a 50, 60, 70% chance you're going to get a call. I'm sorry, but there's nothing much we can do for them. You're going to get woken up. Your sleep is going to be terrible. But now if we're talking more of the slow, the moderate stations, I think we can start playing a stats game on that one. Not necessarily low-hanging fruit, but something in the future that we can discuss. So let's go back to the center topic here is sleep hygiene on duty. And one of the main things that you guys can have some control over is having a stable or a consistent bedtime. Your wake-up times are going to be at the mercy of the tones, but have a consistent bedtime that's also replicated in your off-duty life. Because your guys' circadian rhythm, it is highly disrupted. And the one thing that helps stabilize and normalize the circadian rhythm is a stable bedtime and a stable wake-up time. Wake up is out of the equation, so the only thing we can control is a stable wake or bedtime. So you guys choose what that bedtime is. Hopefully it's a 10, 10:30, something around there, a little earlier, preferably a little bit better. But nonetheless, is now I have my stable bedtime. Then you can start building your sleep hygiene routine around that. Meaning, if your bedtime is 10, then any stimulant consumption that you guys enjoy, whether it's the caffeine or nicotine or your pre-workouts and your energy drinks, make sure you're having them earlier into the day so that half-life of it is not impacting your ability to fall asleep and stay asleep. I'll be more specific. So if your bedtime is 10, your last caffeine intake should be roughly around 1 or 2 p.m. because caffeine is going to be in your body for roughly about 6 to 8 hours-ish, somewhere in there. So again, your last caffeine intake roughly 1 or 2 p.m. So that means no energy drinks, no coffee, no pre-workouts after that time there. If you guys are fans of the carbonation of coffee with your dinner or something in the diet, because it's just habit now, go for it, but do a decaf option. Do a non-stim version of your energy drink for the sake of just getting that carbonation in there. When it comes to nicotine usage, that's growing in popularity right now in the fire service, is if you guys are Zen users or any other form of nicotine, is consume your last pouch roughly about 3 to 4 hours prior. Half-life for nicotine is roughly about 120 minutes, 2 hours-ish. To be on the safe side, let's consume it 3 hours prior to that. If you just love putting that pouch in here at different times throughout the day, especially in your evening, and invest in, I'm calling them placebo pouches, but it's a magnesium pouch, it's a vitamin B pouch, it's a nootropic, alpha GPC pouches. There's a company out there that's firefighter owned that's been developing this product. I was just talking about this product last week and I'm blanking on the name now. It's going to come back to me in a bit. But anyways, is now these products are out there where if you guys just enjoy the act of taking the pouch out and putting it in, continue doing it. But now it's no longer nicotine. Now it's whatever other placebo. I'm calling it a placebo, whatever it is. So half the habit is still there, but you're not just depriving yourself of the habit altogether. So that's that sleep hygiene there is remove stimulants. So bedtime's at 10, remove your stimulants, whatever half-life is prior. And then winding down to it is these screens that we have all the time is set it automatically so you have your blue light filter. So at sundown, your phone automatically turns on to that blue light. Same thing with our laptops. Any screen in the station is turning to that blue light filter on. You guys can be cool like Huberman and get those glasses that he's been promoting for a while, whether it's the yellow ones, the red ones, or just the regular clear ones that have the blue shade ones. So that's another option there as well. And now in the station itself, whether you guys have dorms or you guys have commons, that's the tough part there. Because if you guys just have commons, then you're now distracted or disrupted by the footsteps, the toilet flushing, the whatever environmental noises are disturbing you guys. If you guys have more of your dorms, then invest in some blackout curtains. And then depending if you guys want to do it is put one of those sleep masks on so that all external light is no longer impacting your ability to fall asleep and stay asleep. I have a series on sleep hygiene that should be posting next week, I think. Cool. And so then we block out all lights, so either blackout curtains or a sleeping mask. You don't know what the policy is on white noise machines at the station. If it's allowed and you guys can still hear tones with the noise machine on, go for it. Is put a white noise on so that drowns out what any other environmental noises that are going to impact your ability to fall asleep. Now, when you're actually in bed, again, keep the phones away from you, even if you have the light blocking system on, and get into a book that you guys genuinely enjoy. The topic doesn't matter, just read. And on the other one that's gaining a lot of steam right now, not in the fire space, but from like a mental health perspective that's trickling over to sleep hygiene is breath work. And this is one of the theories that I have as well, is if I can teach the firefighter more just entry-level breath work, that is the one tool that we have in our arsenal that we can manually switch our autonomic nervous system from a sympathetic response, from that stressor, that fight or flight response, over to that rest and digest, that parasympathetic response. That is the one direct tool that we have to tell our body we're no longer in a stressful situation. Now it's time to unwind. And everything is controlled through breath work. It plays on our 10th cranial nerve called the vagus nerve, and that then plays onto our heart rate, our blood pressure, and some other neurotransmitters that we have floating around. Is if I can have some entry-level breath work, think box breathing, think of that, the breathing work that Huberman talks about. I don't know the name of it, but you guys have probably all heard the pattern.
The physiological sigh. Yeah.
I don't know the name of it. We're going to go with that name there.
Yeah.
But any of this that can get your body to go from a sympathetic response to now parasympathetic response. This has been shown in the literature multiple times, is if I willingly induce stress on you right now, say I'm going to give you a 15-minute public talk that you have to prepare for, and you have 5 minutes to do it, your heart rate starts increasing, your blood pressure increases, your neurotransmitters begin to increase, and then these same group of people, now I say, after your talk, here's this breath work. Go for it. Those who did the breath work versus not doing the breath work, the change in or the drop in heart rate, blood pressure, and HRV is how we track all this stuff. And HRV is much lower compared to the ones who didn't do the breath work. So this is non-fire population applied to the fire now. Is you guys are in bed and you guys, actually let me ask some more questions here because this is the fun part. If I ask you guys is when you guys go into bed, whatever bedtime you guys have, how long does it take you guys to fall asleep the first time? What do you guys get?
My latency is pretty good, like
Mine,
5 to 10 minutes.
so like
Oh,
you talked
nice.
about, yeah, mine's probably, I've got a new routine of, I read like crazy. I was a bookworm as a kid, and I got away from it for a while. And now I've been reading before I go to bed. Yeah, I read until like my eyes are barely awake, and then I'm asleep right after. If I don't read my book before I go to bed, like it takes me probably, like last night I didn't have my book, and
Yeah.
I just got off shift. It took me like an hour. I was just tossing and turning. I even like did a little bit of breath work too, which did help out. But it's like I am so dependent on reading my book for me to fall asleep.
You turn that brain off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then for you guys are lucky. Your latency is short. When we look at the average firefighter, roughly about 20 to 30 minutes on duty. Tones go off, you guys go do what you guys do, you guys come back. Let's say if it was a bloody nose, a tummy ache, something you guys can clear very quickly. 15, 20 minutes of work you guys do, you guys back to the station. How long does it take you to fall asleep now?
Sometimes I don't.
Dude, yeah, sometimes it's just a benign call, and it's like it's impossible to fall back asleep.
Yeah.
And now let's say it's not a benign call, and now it's a full working call. Fire, or it's not even a false alarm, it's actual fire you guys have to put out, or a full cardiac arrest. Now when you guys get back to the station,
Good luck.
it's not going to happen. So that whole like sympathetic response that you guys have going on there, how do I consciously turn that off? How do I slowly begin bringing that response down? And all these items that we've talked about until now, they all play a role in it. Some of them play a bigger role than others, but it's the compound effect of everything put together that can allow you guys to fall asleep quicker. So back to the book example that you just gave me right now is when you guys are in bed, you guys are either ruminating on what you guys have to do tomorrow when you get home, your to-do list that you have to do, or you're ruminating on that past call that you guys just went on and how things could have gone better or worse, or whatever it is. Your mind is just going. So that is impacting your ability to fall asleep. That is your sympathetic response. Maybe you're not in a stress situation, but your heart rate and your blood pressure is still high. Your breath rate is still high. But if now I'm reading my book, I'm now conscious of whatever story I'm reading here. That's helping my mind no longer think about today, yesterday, and tomorrow. Now I'm distracted with this. Throw some breath work in there where you guys are consciously slowing down your breathing. As you guys are reading, sleep onset happens so much quicker. So if I take the average firefighter who falls asleep in 30 minutes on duty first time around, and when we start layering in all these different sleep hygiene stuff in there, all the items that we've talked about, can I get them to fall asleep 25% quicker, 50% quicker? If I ask the everyday firefighter, would you be okay if you got an extra 50% more sleep on duty than you do previously? And I think everybody will say yes. Because the majority of the time you guys spend in bed, it sucks, but you guys are tossing and turning. And that's the reality of it. So we can't do nothing about the tones, but can we do something about what's happening before the tones go off? And I think the answer is yes.
Do you tell people to monitor their sleep? Like I'm over my Whoop. I've been doing it for about almost 2 years now. And I noticed that's why my latency has gotten better, because as I wear my Whoop, I figure out what is better for me to go to sleep faster, better HRV recovery throughout the night, lower heart rate, like what works and what doesn't. Because you go in there and you answer all the questions afterwards, and then it spits out, after you answered it like 30 times, it tells you, this is good for you, this is bad for you. So it's kind of like individualized, right? Are you recommending any of those to any of your firefighters?
Any wearables? Yeah.
Wearables? I mean, he uses his Apple Watch with the app too. So
if you guys would have talked to me a year ago, I would have said yes. The majority of my PhD work was on that, is what wearable has the most application over to the firefighter. And I started going through the Apples and the Garmins and the Auras and the Whoops and the Fitbits and all of these. And some products are better than others, sure. But then how much applicability does it truly have? There's a whole different monster of a conversation here. But in my PhD work, I was tracking HRV and then sleep, subjective sleep. So I would ask you guys, how did you sleep last night? And a bunch of other things here. But if we just focus on sleep and HRV, the perception of sleep was equally as strong as what HRV was saying. So, and there's an asterisk here that I'm going to come back to, is you guys can see off your wearable is, oh, my HRV is bad. My sleep was terrible as well. I feel like shit this morning.
Yeah.
But if I would separate those and I would just ask you, hey, how do you feel? How was last night? Terrible night. And then now add the wearables on top of it. The wearables would just confirm whatever they were feeling. That happened maybe 70% of the time. So is the wearable absolutely necessary? No, because your guys' perception of how well you sleep is equally as good. Now, if you guys really love data, go for it. Get a Whoop, get an Aura. I guess the Whoop and Aura, and Apple too, they're probably your top 3 products for your sleep metrics. Aura, Whoop, and Apple. But then the reason why I kind of changed my mind on this is how consumed we get with the numbers. We now try to gamify the HRV score instead of just improving sleep hygiene altogether, and instead of just trying to attack like the main root cause of what's going to track that HRV. I'll give you a better example. Is I know breath work is going to give me a better HRV score. If I'm doing it right now, my HRV is 30. I do some breath work, my HRV is now 37. It works. But if I'm just focused on my breath work for the sake of improving my HRV, I'm going to go under this false assumption that if I do my breath work at 12 a.m. midnight versus 10 p.m., I'm going to get a good sleep score. So we're missing the point there is let's attack sleep hygiene first. HRV and all your other sleep metrics are going to follow an improvement. It shouldn't be the other way around is if I focus on improving my HRV, then my sleep hygiene will get better. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it totally makes sense because a lot of times sometimes just the opposite, right? My Whoop will be like, oh, dude, you crushed it last night. And I'm like,
I feel like crap.
Remember tossing and turning. I remember getting up to take a piss twice. I remember like, I didn't sleep. I don't feel like I slept good last night. How am I getting a 90% recovery right now? So yes, I do question it quite a bit. But what I do like about it is it gives you a little bit of data for the things that help you and that don't help you. I almost think like wear it for a year to see what your trends are. But I've got addicted to it, unfortunately. And like, then after that year, it makes you feel better. It doesn't. And then just, you have that data now, right? So, because I hate wearing it like.
Yeah, all the time. Like, you told me, which is, if it does anything, right? It's like you stop drinking as much alcohol. Because that was just an eye opener. It's like every time I drink and I wear my Whoop, it's just like I can see it, right? It's blatant, right? Like, you can't get away from it. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm fine. I got a couple of drink, right? Yeah, exactly. Like where it's, your REM's crap, your deep sleep's crap, and then your HRV's in the toilet. And you're like, when I don't drink, this is way better. So like, I think it does have some value. But I do agree with you. Like
100%.
We talked about this earlier. It's the foundation. So build your foundation, all the easy stuff, all the stuff that is just like, you're supposed to do. And then if you get that squared away, cool, throw something fancy in there that's going to maybe move the dial another 5%. So it goes with sleep, it goes with exercise, it goes with food. Like, take care of the basics.
Yeah.
And you want to get the crazy supplement, cool, but are you eating right? Are you exercising? Because that one supplement you heard from Huberman or somebody else, it's not going to move the dial like you think it is. Like, you got to have the foundation there first.
Correct. Time out here. I thought my laptop was charging this whole time, and it's not even plugged in.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that, guys.
It's all good.
Yeah, another thing I wanted to chat to you about was touch on real quick was basically addictions with first responders, right? Due to like our dopamine levels, cortisol spikes that we get constantly at work, that when it correlates over to our personal life, right? Like we kind of tend to, like porn's a big one in first responders. I know that.
Dopamine.
Dopamine, like, drinking, drugs, just whatever our crutch is, right? Like, I know that we tend to have more addiction problems than normal working class. And I know sleep has some things to do with that as well.
Have you ever gone into that data, that research of just like the firefighter in general, of like, that's their makeup, they're a dopamine driven individual, and you kind of see that route and like the risky behavior type deal? And is that any data that you have in there that like kind of shows that?
Mm-hmm.
So this is not work that I've done directly, personally. My colleagues have. one department that we work with, when we host a wellness session, one of their members says, "Hey, we're doing a big push on mental health right now. Before you guys start, can you pass out this anonymous survey?" And it's asking questions about like what our vices look like. So it's talking about pornography, alcohol, nicotine, cigarettes, adultery is on there, some other items. I forget what the other items are. And these individuals, the guys and girls, when they're getting the survey here, again, it's anonymous, but they're hopefully they're answering honestly. And it's asking about divorce as well, like marital status. Are you divorced? Are you married? Divorced? How many times divorced? And all that other stuff. And when we got the information back, this is almost what we expected, right? It was going to be alcohol was high on that list, maybe not to the point of abuse, but alcohol it's a regularly consumed with the fire service. Nicotine was really high on there. Pornography is high. Adultery, I don't remember looking at adultery or divorce status, but these are the ones that the results I got back to us. We didn't do anything with this info. This was more of an in-house project that they had going on, so I don't know what the outcome of it was. But if we just zoom out and think about, well, why is the everyday firefighter a big consumer of alcohol, of nicotine, of anything that's going to give us that dopamine? And just biologically, we are wired to want more dopamine. It feels good. Whether it's a cheap dopamine rush, like scrolling on this for I don't know how long, or something you genuinely worked for. You guys were on probation for a whole year and you find you're now no longer on probation. That big dopamine rush of, I did it. Like that we're addicted to.
It's a motivator.
And it's a motivator, exactly.
Yeah.
So whether we get that rush at a cost, whether monetary cost or a health cost or whatever we have to give up and sacrifice in order to get that rush, us as humans, we're always going to choose the path of least resistance, unless this is much stronger than that other biological drive there. So then now let's take the everyday firefighter. Is you guys have worked either a Kelly schedule or you guys are working a 48s, and after that second day on, you guys are tired. You guys got maybe 4 hours of sleep each night, non-consecutive. You guys are dealing with your captain who may or may not have your back on stuff. You guys have some marital problems, whatever that home life looks like. And the one thing that makes you feel good is alcohol. And this is where I can have that 1 hour of break from it all. This is where I can escape that problem a little bit. And at first, it's not the main go-to escape. I'm going to go chop it up with my buddies because I'm having a hard time. And the way that you guys are chopping it up is over some beers. And that hour that you guys were hanging out now becomes 2 hours. Is now your buddy took off from the bar and you're going to hang out at the bar for a little bit longer because you don't want to go back home. And now you're 2 hours at the bar hanging out there. And you can kind of see how this develops over time here. So I hate to say solution to this, but the way we address this here is, and I'm going to sound kind of cheesy here, but this is where like those healthy stress coping mechanisms really come in. Is do we alleviate our stress with alcohol, pornography, nicotine, any of these vices that are going to help me feel better up here, or the ones that cost me a lot more, meaning I have to now get to the gym, I now have to go for a walk, now I have to put out some sort of physical effort in order for me to de-stress, to get that management in there. And then that's a kind of a discipline that I have very little to no expertise in. When I get those type of questions and those type of firefighters asking me for some help on there, I defer over to our mental health guys that we have inside. We have contracted with other external providers before, and that's where I defer out to.
Well, yeah, you did nail it on the head of like, all the stressors that we have, and then finding these vices that kind of get us away. That's an escapism. And that can help in the short term. And, alcohol here and there, it's fine if you are able to manage it, but there's also a point of, being able to look in the mirror and have some self-reflections. Like, is this serving me? Is this serving me for the good, or is it getting away from me? And then like, because we kind of have that with peer support, is like seeing somebody and like, hey, you're not acting like yourself. Your behaviors change. You're going in this kind of wrong direction. And that's where us as a fire service need to like look out for each other, because those vices can carry you away and turn you into a different person.
Yeah.
But having, you know, the trust of your peers and other peers looking out for your best interests, that's another cultural thing. Like, hey man, like you're just not yourself lately. Like what's going on? You're partying way more often. Like you're, you know, dating constantly. You're just going through dates after dates. And like every time I go by the bar, I go once a week. You're there every single time and you're obliterated. Right. So having that support in that culture, I think, can help alleviate some of that stuff. Knowing that you're not on your own when you're going through these things, I think is insanely important for the everyday firefighter to know that there is help, and like this isn't normal to be going in that direction so extreme.
We have to be better about it though too. I mean,
Yeah.
the blue on blue crime gets pretty bad sometimes. You know, it's like,
And we're a frat house too. So like we promote a lot of those risky behaviors, right? We're like, oh yeah, you got a new girl, you know, you went partied and did this and blah, blah, blah. So it's like, it's a double-edged sword. You know, how do you skate that line? How do you do that balancing act of like, yeah, it's good to have fun. It's good to release. But like when it consumes you, then that's like, oh, okay, we got to tone that back. Maybe we need to get some help.
We got a grant for a couple $1,000s, and we wanted to do a mental health related project. So we started reaching out to different departments and individuals saying, hey, would you be willing to share your story? Plenty said no for good reasons, and others said, yeah, I'm willing to share it. So we recorded this, and then we started using this as part of our mental health initiative that we were trying to push. And a lot of the stories being told is that their coworkers or peers started saying, hey, you've been very distant from us. Like you don't BS with us the way you used to. You don't hang out with us the way you used to. It seems like you're going down a path, like a dark path. And almost every guy mentioned this is you get like offended because it's almost like they're attacking you. And there's a big defense mechanism there. It's like, no, I'm fine. I'm not pulling away from you guys. You guys are, and you start going down that path there. And then when they come out of it on the other end, is now they're sharing their story. They're sharing their story, saying, "Yeah, I was pulling away for whatever the reasons are." But that is where you guys come in as peers and keep an eye on each other for that stuff. Again, things are way outside my wheelhouse, but just on like a humanistic level, is when you see your buddy, your coworker, somebody acting the way they're not usually are, or they're showing some of these yellow red flags. That's where it's up to us to say, hey, are you okay? Like you genuinely asking if you're okay instead of the way that we usually do every morning. Hey, how's it going? We don't really care how's it going. We just ask because
Small talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in this case is, hey, how's it going? Like you genuinely mean it, and that hopefully will get some guard down.
Yeah.
And then the conversation can open up.
Well, I think that's easier in the fire service too. We're getting better at the fortunate thing that we have that like cops don't have, and you know, I guess paramedics too, because there's only two of them, or you know, ambulance people that work in ambulances. Like when something bad happens to us, we can come back and decompress right away as a crew, right? Like if you have a good captain, you're like, all right, everybody sit down, we're talking about this. Or you get in the engine and unfortunately we have some dark humor, a little bit of dark humor about it, right? And it gets us at least gets us talking about that topic instead of just shoving it down deep inside, right? And the thing that worries me is like police officers, you know, they go to the same calls we do, and they see a lot more shit than we do. Actually, they go to every bad call. Like how do they decompress? They're just one person in a car, you know.
They don't get to bounce ideas off. They don't get to make light of whatever the situation is, or you know, kind of reflect with a coworker. You know,
exactly.
a person that you trust. Like you know, the majority of the people we work with, we have to have a certain level of trust, and we can have those conversations. To what degree it depends on person to person, but
yeah, because we talk about everything about our personal life, like what we're going through at home, what we're going through with our kids, you know, and it helps. It's almost like coming to
it's like almost therapy.
For me is therapy, and I could talk to people about, right? Like, and the thing you find out is like everybody else is going through that shit too, you know, like you're not the only one. It's hard, and so it just doesn't make you feel like you're on like an island. So Cops, I'm worried about them. They don't get to have those conversations. And that would be tough, man, being isolated.
So this is published work too, where they were comparing the mental health of fire versus police,
Mm.
and you guys explained it well. Is the firefighter, although they do struggle with the mental health issues, their the severity of it is lower compared to the law enforcement officer, the PD, and it's up to the researcher and you guys to really interpret that data. And you guys explained it very well. Is you guys have three other guys that you can go and chop it up with after, and when some of the guys have kind of like told me what the way they chop it up after, it's a lot of dark humor.
Yeah.
And they're telling me these stories, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this is what you guys talk about. But nonetheless, this is a coping mechanism. This is a way that you guys deal with it, and it's a healthier way because there's camaraderie in there.
Yeah.
As opposed to the PD, they respond to the call is now cleared, they're back in their car by themselves. Maybe they have a partner, maybe they don't, and now it's just up to them to process that on their own.
Yeah, they just ruminate on it.
They go home and their spouse, they don't know what they're going through, and they don't want to put that stress on them and saying, hey, today I saw a 3-year-old, hey, today I saw a wife or a husband. Like, you want to go home and be a dad or a mom, and you don't want to bring that stress on them. So again, you're holding it in here, and there has to be an outlet somewhere. The criticism I thought was high in the fire service. The small PD that I've worked with, it is much higher than PD.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially the public criticism, right? Like, nobody likes, usually when the cops come to your house, something bad happened, right? I mean, same with the fire
from that criticism, gotcha.
Like, of course, we always like to joke back and forth between police and fire. Like, everybody hates cops and everybody loves firemen, right? But it's, a lot of that's true, I mean, there's truth in everything, and I don't think it should be, but, when a cop pulls you over, you get a $400 ticket, and I mean, I think that's another aspect too. That's, especially they're being so violently attacked right now these days with everything that they do with body cam, and everything is being posted on social media, and that one bad egg can ruin it for everybody type thing. I just, again, no question in that. I'm just worried about them. And I wish there was a better outlet to where maybe we need to be better as firefighters. We run these bad calls with these cops. Be like, hey, come back to the station. We're going to talk.
It's not a bad idea. Like, I mean, our doors are always open. We've
done that.
We've had guys come over and like sit, and like, I have tremendous empathy for law enforcement, like especially the years I've been in this job of what they have to deal with. And like, it's anything that they deal with every day, it's like, they're always on edge. Anything can happen, and they're doing their best. Like, I have tremendous respect for law enforcement. They help out us a ton, and like the flack that they take, and they continually go through each day and try to be as fair as they can. But there's always some moral injury, right, that can come from it too, over years and years of you're getting called to the worst stuff, so you kind of see the worst people. So it's tough. They become very calloused, which we can be too. But let's shift it a little bit. There's a big hot topic in the fire service, and it seems like kind of an epidemic in the United States of like hormone issues. So like TRT and all those things. So you talk about all these metrics of, body fat, BMI, just people being out of shape, and that becoming like an issue with an older generation. And now that's kind of become a hot topic with just the fire service in general, and even across the nation. I've been kind of seeing more clinics popping up because people are having these issues. What is your take on that? The pros, the cons, the usage, how to prevent it, how to like go about it correctly, smart, like all the things, all the encompassing that you want to kind of dive into and what you've seen so far.
So if we keep the topic just to hormone replacement, specifically testosterone replacement, I think this has grown as a big topic in the fire service. One, because of how much exposure we have to it in social media, but then also because a lot more individuals are getting tested for it now. Mm-hmm. And before, when I say we, like at large, we would say, oh, testosterone matters, but we never really knew what our internal testosterone is. And now that we know what it is, how it influences us, and then we go get a blood draw and we notice, oh shit, my T is low. Then that kind of sets out a cascade from there. So we started offering testosterone testing a lot more regularly now. Some departments pay for their members to get it tested. Other departments, they offer it, meaning, hey, this is available for you guys, but it is out of pocket expense. It's like $60 for a full panel. If you get a price through your Quest Labs, it's like $200 for the full panel. So anyways, for $60, now you know what your total T is, free T, and all the other hormones that it's supposed to bind to. We get that data. So me being curious and always interested in numbers, I start just looking at patterns here. And the average firefighter, their T is in the low, they're in the mid 400s, somewhere in there. It can skew lower or higher depending on the department and the region. I've noticed region as well. Like beach city departments are healthier, and that's a fun conversation.
With the sun,
But
they're out in the sun on the beach.
and they have more lifeguards there. They spend a lot more time outside, and it's a whole different thing from there. But nonetheless, is somewhere in the mid 400s. That's where the average T is for your everyday firefighter. We look at the average age for these departments as well, and these guys, the average age or median age, that's a better way of saying it, is roughly about 35 to 37. So these are not old departments that we're talking about.
It's low.
So we have departments where the median age is in the high 30s, and their average T is in the low 400s. Now, you take this to any physician and you'll say, hey, you're normal. Normal is between 300 and 1,000, somewhere in that range there. Some labs will push it as low as 250. Other labs will push it as high as 1,200. But for the sake of today's argument, let's just say it's between 300 and 1,000. You'll see your score of 400 and change, and they'll say, hey, you're normal, you're fine. And your physician will say, just get better sleep, get better diet, get better exercise, and you'll be back to normal. They're not wrong. But now let's put the layer of your guys' job in play. Is half your guys' life, you guys are on duty, which is a stressor in itself. And then when you guys are sleeping on duty or trying to sleep on duty, it's non-existent. You guys are in bed for 5 hours, sure, but it's non-continuous hours. And as we just talked earlier, the whole time is not spent being asleep. So now you have the major influencer of poor sleep and its direct influence on your guys' T levels and growth hormone levels. But now this is the reality of your 30-year-old firefighter who still has 20 years left on the job. And they can be the individual who's saying, hey, I'm trying to exercise. I'm trying to get my nutrition. Like they're doing an actual conscious effort of it. But then the light or the job takes over and has some sort of impact on your inability to do that regularly or to a high intensity. So that individual, you take that one and you say, hey, but for $100 a month, we can improve your T levels much higher. And then you can see how they naturally gravitate towards that. Then you go to the other firefighter who has low T, but they don't do an actual worthwhile effort to get their diet and their exercise in. For them, it's a quick fix. For them is, my T levels are low, but if I just take this needle once a week, then I can bump my numbers up. Maybe that will solve my sleep and my fatness and my all the other things here. And then you have the guys on the opposite end, is these guys who are just naturally at 800 T levels. And I want to put an asterisk here because I want to come back to just these total T levels because there's a lot of conversation that we can discuss on that one. But anyways, these guys who have 800, 900 natural T, and then they're like, but I want more of it. So then for $100 a month, we can increase your T levels to the 1,200, 2,000. Now they're super physiological levels. And that becomes a whole conversation. So you see all across the spectrum where the gravitation towards this hormonal therapy is really drawing us. And because it's being talked about so much on here, now it's constantly in our face of this is an option. This is an option. It's an affordable option. And you see that's the framework of which we're working in now.
Well, the guys are talking about it, have their shirts off with an 8-pack, veins popping out everywhere. Like, look at me, it works. Well, that's not just simple TRT replacement, right? So
so that we start going down that path, right? There.
Yeah.
Correct. So you see where the gravitation is for the firefighter at large. The guys who don't put the worthwhile effort in, the guys who are training no matter what, and the guys who are somewhere in the middle. And each one of those pockets they're getting pulled towards it. But then we have to ask the question is how, and to be clear, I'm never going to be against it nor for it. My job is to just educate you on here's all the pros and what you're going to experience, more likely to experience. Here's all the negatives. And then if you want to do it, let's talk about how you can mitigate the negatives and take as much of the positives from it. So if we take cost out of the equation, and let's say any one of these firefighters that we talked about, the guys who haven't put any effort, the guys that put all the effort, and the ones who are somewhere in between. If we talk to these individuals, money is not an issue right now. We say once you jump on the needle, you're going to be on it for a very long time, if not life. Because once you jump on it, your natural test levels, they're going to go down. You are introducing exogenous tests. You're telling your pituitary gland and your testicles that I have enough test levels already. I don't need more. So then from a physical perspective, we're just talking aesthetic changes here. You have testicular atrophy, so your nuts shrink. You can have an increase in body hair, increase in body acne, increase in gynecomastia. If you guys watch the movie Fight Club, you know what they call it there. Yeah, there you go. Um, you can have a loss of hair. Those are internal, or those are aesthetic changes. Internal changes, increase in heart and your blood pressure and your cholesterol, impacts your liver enzymes. It can increase your risk of some cancers, more specifically your prostate cancer. It can have mood swings. And the one that it's going to have the biggest thing is fertility. So if you are still thinking of family planning, that's one huge thing to consider there. So these are all the negatives. From the positive perspective, you guys know these already, is my sleep can probably improve, my recovery is going to get better, I'm going to have an easier ability to lose body fat and improve my muscle mass or just maintain my muscle mass. I have a higher bone density. I have higher levels of energy. Cognitive performance is much higher. It's that youth hormone. Think of if you guys have little ones, especially like in the high school ages or early 20-year-olds, and your male little ones, like these guys, they put on weight so quickly, muscle mass so quickly, and they lose fat very, very easily.
They're invincible,
yeah. So then that same Superman profile, now apply it to your 30-year-old, 40-year-old, and there's not many that would say, no, I don't want that. So if you decide, yes, I'm going to jump on this, for the individuals who haven't put an effort in at all, yes, your test levels will go up. Yes, you may put on a little bit of muscle mass. Without training, you can still put on muscle mass with increased test, but it's not solving any of the other solutions. Your core, your base of diet and exercise is not there. So yeah, you'll have higher T levels, but it's not going to really move the needle much, if anything, for the guys who don't put any effort in. Now the guys on the opposite end, these are the guys who are training hard and they're eating well, but they want higher levels of it for whatever their motivation is. This is where we have to really talk to them about the negatives. Is yes, you'll get all these positives, but once you start going into super physiological levels, so let's say 1,000 plus, the higher you go on that scale there, the risk of you experiencing all those negatives, it's much greater now. If you were to stay in those normal physiological levels, whether you're on exogenous T or not, the risk of you experiencing any of these negatives, it's not zero, but it's minimal. So that becomes what's your risk tolerance profile? Are you someone who says, yeah, I can tolerate the risk? Go for it. You now know the pros and cons. You assume all liability at that point. And those people in the middle, these are the firefighters now they're trying their best, but despite the job, despite family, they're struggling one way or another. I think those individuals are the ones that can benefit a little bit more, assuming they're not family planning, assuming they can float the cost, because they're genuinely trying. And if I can just give them that tiny little boost, then could that be a little bit motivation for them to really get on their regimen, their exercise and their diet a little bit more? Because if I bring this back to you guys, if you guys are exercising regularly, and then I gave you this magical supplement that I have, and this helped you improve 5 pounds of muscle mass. And if I say, if you keep taking this, but you work out harder, you're going to get bigger biceps, bigger chest, bigger shoulders, and all that other stuff. That motivation may be that extra thing you need to continue chasing that carrot. Take that same idea over to these individuals here, the firefighters somewhere in the middle, where they're trying hard, but life has just gotten the best of them. If they lose body fat, let's say 5 pounds, 10 pounds, if they improved 1 to 3 pounds of muscle mass, would that be a little bit more to get them on a more regimented workout plan? Maybe. If that's the case, then what harm are we causing, assuming they stay in normal physiological levels? And this is something that I've been really wrestling with, is how strong of an advocate should I be for this, or how much should I just maintain a very neutral position on just educating pros and cons? Because this layer back in the conversation we had a while ago is PEPRA. Now you guys have to stay healthier longer.
Mm-hmm.
The firefighter who's trying, but they have to be on into their 50s, and we're just going to say, hey, continue dieting and exercise. That'll take care of everything. Sure, it'll be the base and your core of it, but age is getting the best of you, and the career of a firefighter for the past 30 years is going to get the best of you.
Mm-hmm.
What if we had something that we can really enhance the firefighter to help him stay healthier longer? So this is a position that I've been really wrestling on. I had a post maybe a week, 2 weeks ago, where I was explaining this, and I was just asking the community is, hey, argue against this, because I'm kind of swaying towards the encouragement side here, and I want the community to argue against it so we can try to maintain as neutral as possible.
Right.
What is your guys' opinions? What do you guys got?
Well, we just talked about this.
We talked
on a
about it.
podcast a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we had a guest on who he deals with hormone replacement. That's it. He's been doing it for 30 plus years, right?
Yeah, he's been on it.
He's been on it since he was 38 years old or something like that.
30 plus years.
And he's worked with a lot of first responders with TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, and like there's a lot of people that I've met that have gone to it and they've said it's like changed their lives, right? The brain fog, the recovery, the sleep, all these things. And I think that if, like you said, you've done all the things, you've done all the foundational work, you really tried to get your sleep right, your exercise right, maybe did some type of supplement or looked into certain type of training modalities that can naturally produce more testosterone, and it's still not moving the needle, and you are getting older in this job that does require so much from you to be motivated, to be sharp, to be resilient, I think it is a great option. Having said that, I think you should not make it like a magic bullet type deal. I think you should try to put in a lot of hard work, and hard work is hard work. Some people don't want to do it, right? I mean, it is tough getting in the gym every day and not drinking a bunch of alcohol and really being consistent with your sleep. You kind of turn into a square in a sense, for a lack of a better term. If you really want to optimize your hormones as you get older, you can't do the things you did in your 20, which is the habits that you had, right? You drink and party, and that's how you have friends that do that. That's not going to help your hormone levels. Life gets in the way. You have kids, you have projects, you have other responsibilities. You stop working out as much. You kind of have to look in the mirror a little bit. It's like, well, I know what I need to do, but am I willing to do it? And I think because it's on social media, people have these, they talk to people that have gone on it and it's like absolutely changed their life. I think it's easier to move in that dial, not poo-pooing it all. And I agree. I think like what you talked about, it can change people's lives. And I think it is a great tool if it's used correctly within those parameters, right? I think it can change people's lives for the better, specifically in this department. And like you can speak to it.
Yeah, so I'll talk to it. So I just started TRT in beginning of July. Very small therapeutic doses. My numbers were down they went from like 800 to 600 to basically 240, like within a year.
Wow.
And I never like stopped working out.
This guy's an animal.
I work
he's
out.
so disciplined.
Yeah, I work out every day. I eat very healthy. I drink here and there, but like during that time, actually, which was weird, I stopped drinking for like 6 months, and my numbers actually went down. And I was wearing my Whoop, my numbers went up. So I was trying everything, Tong Ali and all, just the natural remedies to bring my levels back up. Regular blood testing. I go to a guy every 3 to 4 months to get my blood work done. And I was feeling the effects of it. I was feeling like shit. Like it was hard to get my muscle mass back on. I was starting to get a little bit more body fat. Starting to feel a little depressed. And so I've had my doctor for 11 years now. I've been seeing this guy. And he said, I think it's time for you to be on it. And, you know, I was like you talked about earlier, like the cardiovascular risk, the blood pressure, all those things, which for the sake of our show, we had this conversation with Dr. Zocolato a couple weeks ago, and I brought this subject up to him. You know, I was like, I was worried about my cardiovascular health. And I know you said that it affects our cardiovascular health. I'd like to dive into that a little bit more because he said basically taking testosterone helps basically every organ in the body, and it actually is better for your cardiovascular health. And he has his parents on it who are like 90. They ride their bikes every day.
I think
so
he was
just for the sake of I don't want to contradict our own show, you know. Was there something that I missed between?
I think you were saying like super physiological levels have
That's
a
the key.
bigger, yeah. So once you get into
okay.
the over the 1,012, 2,000, now you're
Yeah.
starting to see. That's why bodybuilders. I think that's the stigma. Is bodybuilders are dying from heart failure because they're using these, you know, super
massive amounts,
mass amount of dose, and then they have such great muscle mass. It's such a strain on the heart as well. Like when you do TRT, you're trying to get to 700 to whatever your sweet spot is, and that can have benefits for cardiovascular health. And I think that's what
I feel
Zocolato.
like I mean, just in my own opinion, I feel like a leaner, stronger body is going to, and it's going to fight off like diabetes and like depression and body image issues, and it can combat a lot of things to make you feel better, right? Which when you look good, you feel good, right? So can we just dive into that a little bit?
Sure.
Just because I don't want people to get confused at this store show. Like, well, this guy said this, and I know. I mean, are the therapeutic levels not affecting your blood pressure? Are they not? I mean, my blood pressure's stayed the same. You know, I'm like, I went like 115, 120 systolic usually. So, and I monitor that quite often as well.
So when we're having the T conversation, the asterisk that I want to come back to is the majority, 90% of the conversation around T is we were trying to chase that upper end of normal range of that rate of that level. So from 300 to 1,000, the therapeutic dose is to get you on the 600 to 1,000, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
We're going to play around with the dosage to get you in there. That's where, one, you'll get the majority of the benefits that we discussed, and the negative side effect profile that we talked about. The risk for experiencing those, it's not zero. There's always a risk that you have to assume, but it's much lower. So for the individuals who had low T, think 100s, 200s, maybe even the 300 range, somewhere in there, that does have an impact on your cardiovascular health. So even if you have low T and then through exogenous means you bump those numbers up, yes, your heart health will begin to improve. But then it's this Goldilocks paradox is what porridge is just right. Is low T was bad for heart health. We improve your T levels to now 600, 800. Heart health begins to improve. But if a little T is good, then a lot must be better. Let's continue bumping up those doses. Let me now bump up my dose to 300 mg per week, 400 mg per week, and now your total T levels are in the 1,500, 1,800, 2,000. Now this is where it's going to start to reduce your HDL, increase your LDL. That's already going to have a strain on your cardiovascular system there, increasing your blood pressures. So the majority of these side effects, you notice it a lot more in the super physiological levels. For the guys who are staying within those normal ranges, the risk is minimal. It's not zero. You're always going to assume risk, but it's much, much lower. So that's where that confusion usually comes from. But yes, if you abuse the hormone, the therapy, you're going to assume a much larger risk profile compared to those who stay in a therapeutic dose. For those listening,
estrogen levels too, right?
So then you have to start playing that game as well. Hey, my E2 levels are high or my estradiol levels are high. I'm either going to not do anything about it and then start getting a little bit more gynecomastia and some other stuff that goes along with that as well, or I'm going to add another drug to my weekly or to my daily. And you start playing that game here is now, yes, you're not taking the blood pressure meds and the diabetic meds like the unhealthy individuals, but you're now taking the needle once or twice a week, plus your estrogen blocker, plus your HCG if you're still trying to family plan, plus and you start seeing how it's just the same game, but on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Right.
One of them are taking to maintain their health, the other guys are taking it to maintain, or you guys get my point, right?
Optimize, at that point with some side effects. Like you said, anything we do, I mean, you can drink too much water, right? So you always have to look at your risk benefit ratio right here and be educated and be, we're lucky enough we have Topo, and there are people out there that have the best interest and look and really dive in and look at your blood work and try to keep it within that range so there's the least amount of side effects. And that's what we're harping right now is do your research, find somebody that is well versed in this field, has your best interest, and maybe keep you in check too, right? Like if you start abusing, because you get so much and you're only supposed to take so much, they see that in the blood labs, they can be like, hey, you're taking too much. Like, these are the side effects. Do you really want to go down this rabbit hole and have all these adverse side effects? So
if you're not testing, you're guessing.
Exactly. Blood work is a huge thing, and we can go a whole episode on just blood work for all the firefighters. Dr. Higuera. Higuera. It has been an honor and a privilege. Like, man, we could talk for another 2 hours. It could be a Rogan episode.
That's
Absolutely.
Our longest one.
Yeah, this is our longest one, and it flew by. Like
2 hours.
This was so much fun to talk to you. You're such a wealth of knowledge. Like, we'd love to potentially get you back on here and maybe dive into more specifics and blood work and all that other fun stuff that encompasses the fire service. I mean, it's such a multifaceted topic that, again, we could talk forever about. But really, really enjoyed our conversation here. Really. Like, I found you on Instagram, and what you're doing and how you're getting your information out is just such a breath of fresh air, and no one's really doing it. And I applaud you, and I hope that it just continues on and grows, and we can get as much information out to our brothers and sisters. And so I thank you for that.
Thank you guys for having me on. Thank you guys for giving me a platform. Education is the first step to anything. And the more free education we can put out there through means like you guys are doing it, through the Instagram stuff, the more the guys can learn from trusted sources. And that's the goal. So thank you guys.
Yeah, if we can, you help one person, it makes a huge difference. It makes it all worth it. So again, thank you. And it's been great.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. Hey,
that was collab a little bit afterward. I want to talk to you for a little bit. You good?
Sure. Yeah, what do you guys got? I have to leave in about 15 minutes. At 1:15, I got to leave.
Okay.
I'm going to stop that.
Yeah.
So, that